Welcome to Headway, a show that informs our audience about political issues that affect the nation, the region, and our local area. For the rest of August, we'll be interviewing candidates for the 4th Congressional District of Massachusetts. On this episode, I'll be speaking with David Rosa, a Republican congressional candidate. David is a U.S. veteran who supports President Donald Trump. He is a pro-life candidate and is pro-Second Amendment. Hi everybody, welcome back to the show. As I mentioned in the opener, we're going to be talking with David Rosa, and David is a Republican candidate for the 4th Congressional District of Massachusetts. Welcome, Dave. How are you?
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for your audience for their time and their indulgence. Greatly appreciated, and I am doing well and looking forward to the interview.
Awesome. So Dave, can you tell me a little bit about your background? I know you're a military veteran, and I don't know much else, so can you just share a little bit about your background?
Okay, I'm kind of like a regular person, like many of your members of your audience. My formative years were spent in Fall River, Massachusetts. I grew up doing the odd jobs and part-time work. I delivered newspapers, washed dishes in the restaurant, mopped floors, pumped gas. Worked my way up to in high school. I was on track and cross-country teams and participated in other things. I went on to university, fortunately, and earned my Bachelor of Science degree in business finance. And sometime after that, I don't remember if you remember those years, 78 and around there, we had a terrible economy. I eventually found a way to get myself accepted to the Officer Training School in the United States Air Force. Very fortunate, I felt at the time. And a great experience, love being part of the Air Force. And I ended up as a member of their acquisition corps and was brought up sort of through their ranks, if you will, from cost estimating, budgeting, manufacturing quality assurance, program management. Had the great privilege of being involved on multi-billion and multi-million-dollar programs, involved with, working at the elbow of full colonels and lieutenant colonels and occasionally general here and there. It was an extraordinary experience for somebody with my time in grade and background and whatnot. The Air Force had great reductions in the early 90s. And in order to complete my career, I became a member of the Massachusetts Army National Guard and served proudly with the 379th Combat Support Engineers as a member of the Quartermaster Corps, and was assigned to them and joined them in their first deployment that I know of over to the Middle East, which was 2003. So, and I since then have gone on to complete my time with the military and my time as a civil servant. And in my retired days, I've tried to be active in the community, eventually getting elected to the Parks and Recreation Commission. So I've been a commissioner for a couple of terms. Recently was voted in to be the chair. And so I've served on a number of committees. I've also been a member of the board of directors of the Taunton River Watershed Alliance. So I've been busy, been active, been trying to, play some part in the community on, I think, a variety of levels and roles. And I did run for Congress in 2016. Against Joseph Kennedy, and I learned a great deal about the district and about, a lot that goes with it. So here I am today, running again, and ask the voters if they can help me out, support me in my bid to prevail in the primary.
All right, great. Thanks for giving us that info. So I think on your Facebook page you had mentioned that you're trying to defend traditional American values, or you want to get back to more traditional American value system and way of life that you feel like we're kind of slipping away from, maybe. Do you want to talk a little bit more in depth about that?
Yeah. Well, I see this as a point in time when there's a great divergence in philosophies and political philosophies. And essentially, it's the free enterprise system. Some people say capitalism. I don't know if they're using the term correctly, but a free enterprise system. And they want to switch to, this is the fundamental problem facing America today, an effort toward making us, they say, socialist. they really mean communist. They really mean a Marxist system. And I'm an advocate for keeping what we have. It's worked for many years. We can make adjustments. We can work with it. Even I have helped to craft proposed legislation for here in the state that, and one of my favorite areas are sort of like housing and taxes on property and whatnot. I think we have a very dynamic system, and we shame on us if we don't learn to use it well and pay attention to it. And I think we'll find that we can make it, just as the generations before us found a way to make it work for them. I think we can make it work for us. I don't think we should, go off the beaten path and try communist or Marxist theory, which has failed clearly in many places in the world. I have relatives, I'm sorry if I'm going too far, but I have relatives in Venezuela, so I can speak from their experience with a country that makes a radical change overnight. I have relatives in South Africa. I can probably speak to that from both my relatives in the news. And even the Soviet Union found out it was failing them. So the communist Chinese have had to have some more of their system to make it tolerable. So, this really radical left sudden shift really isn't the way to go. It's not a good fit for us, and we have a good system. Let's make it work. We need safety, security in our homes, on our way to work, in our places of employment, and when we return home, we don't need riots in the streets, our roadways blocked, or really irrational behavior invading the peace and privacy of our homes and our neighborhoods and our communities.
Okay. So Dave, you're a veteran. Do you think that right now we're, as a country, do you think we're doing a good job at providing services to veterans? And would you, if not, how would you like to expand it or change that?
Well, I've had some exposure to the VA hospital system, and I watched my father and his experiences, and I've had very good friends who served with me in the Guard, who were long-term career employees of the Veterans Administration. And I watched it change over the years, and it desperately needed to. And I'm sure there's going to be more changes. So, the VA was sort of a little bit of a forgotten stepchild of the government agencies, if you will. I don't mean that too harshly. There are a lot of people in there trying to make it a good system, but they had challenges, and it's just time for improvement, and we're getting there. We are making improvements. Probably the biggest one is this business of veterans being able to go to a hospital near them for many things that they might need. So I think that was a giant leap forward. So I'm sure there's some other improvements we can make, and hopefully we will.
All right, Dave. With the pandemic going on, we've had a little bit of pandemic relief, and then there's been a little between the Republican-led Senate and the House Democrats. There's been a little batting around of pandemic relief packages back and forth. Are you happy with how pandemic relief has been going? And I mean, it probably has to go further, right? So like, where else do you want to see? I mean, more stuff is going to be happening, right? So where else would you want it to see it going in the future? And if you're elected to Congress and it's still a problem in January, what would you want to see happening then?
Yeah. Well, hopefully in all of our decisions, whether it's the pandemic or anything else, that we make fact-based decisions based on science and knowledge and real life experience. That should be our starting point. Now, with this particular pandemic, we were caught a little bit off guard, and there were some very hard and unfortunate lessons learned. But in many regards, we've arrived in terms of dealing with it. So we ought not to allow this pandemic to take over and dominate politics in an unreasonable fashion. Now, locally here, we have Bristol County, we have Plymouth County are the two examples I like to bring up. These counties were provided literally millions of dollars to share with the cities and towns in their communities to help with COVID-19 relief. Our governor, for whatever reason, decided that he wanted that money directly put into the hands of the state for them to make the determination of where to direct it and how to deploy it. So Bristol County commissioners rolled over in a heartbeat. And a lot of the people in the towns and cities in Bristol County, they have been denied the millions of dollars that should have been directed by the Bristol County Commissioners into their cities and towns and help with their school systems in whatever fashion, COVID mitigation efforts. Over in Plymouth County, there's a Republican, at least one, on the Bristol County Commissioners. They said, no, we're keeping the funds and we will work with our cities and towns and distribute the funds. So this is, why do I speak to this? It's applying the solution, bringing the solution down to application at the lowest possible level because the people, presumably at the cities and towns, have some idea how they would best like to apply that money, as opposed to, applied from, a one-size-fits-all solution, perhaps applied by the governor. I don't know. I don't know what his, thinking is or plans are. But yes, there's going to be some more, but, we want fact-based, science-based decisions. Right now, our understanding of COVID-19, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, I readily admit, but right now we're looking at something that it can affect all of us, but more than 99% of us get it, are exposed to it, and it comes and goes. We don't even know we had it. Now, so that leaves a small percentage of us that have it, and in that small percentage, some of us have a flu-like symptoms, varying in degree. Some of us, unfortunately and tragically, succumb to this virus. However, is that a reason to impose really dictatorial solutions on the entire population? Now, if people want to wear a mask, I think that should be encouraged by leadership, but I don't think we need laws or hefty fines. But our leadership can encourage these things and get voluntary participation, I believe, more successfully and more appropriately by coming out and asking for that and making their case. Americans will not ignore a good argument for that. And so I think our leadership, it's on them to do so. And where we need funding, we will reach out for that funding. I, as a congressman, would support funding where we need it.
Yeah, but I mean, in some states that they have, they suggest you wear a mask, but they don't mandate it. There is less mask wearing in those places, though. So like in Georgia, where the kids were in school and they weren't wearing masks, they were it was mask optional, but they weren't wearing masks. And they had the one where they suspended that girl for taking video, and they had nine cases like right away, in that one school. So I mean, I feel like people aren't necessarily going to wear the mask just because they're told maybe you should,
Well, again, leadership has to step in and play their role.
Yeah.
And that is not to say that they abdicate their role. Mm-hmm. They should actively be in there. Now, the school thing is, again, we're still fairly early on in this. And unfortunately, it's really hard to make a choice between bad decisions. And sometimes it's hard to make a choice between good decisions. Right now, we're in the, choices between, which look pretty risky decisions, particularly when school children are involved, our children are involved. Yeah. So, somebody is going to cross this bridge, and we're going to get results, and we're going to learn from it. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, that is imposed on us by the circumstances. Mm-hmm. It's not going to feel good, but we have to get there. Somebody has to cross that bridge first. Sometimes I call on the example of, I don't know how many people are sort of nature lovers, but yeah, you ever see these nature films and the penguins are all standing on the edge of the ice and they're all waddling back and forth and the crowd's getting bigger and bigger. And what the penguins are reluctant to jump in the water because they don't know if a predator's waiting for them. But eventually, by waddling back and forth, one of them falls into the water and the rest watch to see how he swims. I'm not trying to make light of the situation. I'm trying to say, this happened. And we somewhere, somehow, we've got 50 states where of experimental labs with democracy. Someone's going to cross this bridge. Okay. Hopefully, we cross it safely and sanely. But we have to cross this bridge.
Okay. So So you're a supporter of the president, and I saw from your Facebook that you go to rallies, pro-Trump rallies, and with the Make America Great.
Yeah, I participate. Yes.
So, if you're elected, so let's say in January, if the president's reelected and you get elected, and you're both in January, you're both sworn in. Will if in Congress, is there is there anything that you would disagree with him on, that you wouldn't go along? Are there any policies that you disagree?
Sorry, I lost you for a moment.
So in January, if you're both,
Went away.
if in January you're in Congress and the president's in the White House, President Trump's in the White House and you're in Congress, are there any policies that you would disagree with him on that you'd want in Congress?
Well, there might be,
That you know of now?
That, let's see. Well, I think it's prior to the pandemic, his domestic policies were very useful to us. I think showed great promise. I think a lot of his foreign policies have shown great promise. I mean, it's a complex world, and up until this point, here's what we sort of have to remember. Up until this point, what was there were a lot of things going awry, and a lot of Americans understood that in their heart, and they couldn't understand why things were going as badly as they were, and that really laid all the foundation for the election of Donald Trump. And he knew from his place in the business world that for a long time things have been going bad, and it needed to get turned around. And America agreed with him on that. So thank God that's happened. Hopefully we'll emerge from this pandemic, get the upper hand, and his economic policies will help. Economic opportunity for all is what solves a lot of the social problems. If everybody feels like they're doing better and they're making progress, that really goes a long way to solve a lot of social ills and whatnot. And a little more safe and sane behavior with on the foreign relations front has got to be helpful to everybody. Okay. Foreign nations sometimes have to face their own destiny, and so they should not always count on us to be boots on the ground when maybe they could solve their problem with some compromise between themselves.
Your opponent in the primary, Julie Hall, she says that she would want to defund sanctuary cities. And there's a few in Massachusetts that I know of. There might be more that I don't know of. Are you on board with that, or do you have your own ideas on? I mean, if you want to expand on immigration in general, you can talk about that too. But what do you think about that idea about defunding sanctuary cities?
Well, I don't know about defunding them, so to speak, but they certainly need to have that cold water thrown in their face about their behaviors and where it might take them. And, are they really ready to embrace the results of the federal government standing back from them? Are they, I think a lot of those cities right now are thinking that's maybe not a good idea. And maybe, I mean, if they sort of want to, cut their own path through the wilderness, so to speak, maybe they need to go through that bit of pain to bring them to the realization that it's the wrong path to be on. So I don't want to, slam the door in their face, because that's not really the job. The job is to find that place where we come to agreement. So am I unhappy with sanctuary cities per se? I have a lot of doubts about it. I have a lot of concerns about it. Can we do a better job with immigration? Yes, I believe we can. And unfortunately, due to bad actors on the scene, we've had to go through the expense of building in this extraordinary wall on our southern border. We probably have some immigration leaks, if you will, on our northern border. And these things need to be addressed because they're being abused, and people are making a point of abusing them. And it's not fair to the rest of America. And so we need to get back to that and take what precautions we have to. And, if we have to have those sort of hard moments with some cities, then we're going to have to do that. And as you've seen from what's happened already, some cities have been accommodating the wrong actors, and they're suffering for it. Some of their folks are moving out. Some damage has been done to those cities that will take a long, long time to repair. and they may find themselves with less income. They may find themselves with very difficult civil problems to manage. That can only take them to even worse positions. But, sometimes lessons have to be learned the hard way. That I would caution against sort of cutting them loose. We have to keep our safety line, safety net, and a door to negotiation open.
All right. So we have a pretty big opioid problem here in the Northeast, and Massachusetts,
Yes.
New Hampshire,
Yes.
all throughout New England.
Yes.
Yeah. What would you like if elected to Congress through that role as a congressman? What would you like to do to help end the opioid epidemic?
Well, number one, we have to take certain parties to task, and that may be the pharmaceutical companies. It may be people in the medical industry. I don't want to speak about my personal losses, but let's just say I have motivation to work this one well. And it's gotten out of hand. And once again, we turn back to scientific data and fact-based decisions. We look at the number of pills that have been prescribed, we look at the population and the reason for it, and we can see something is out of whack. And so we need to fix that. And we need to fix it probably from pharmaceutical companies right down to the doctors that are prescribing them. But I know there's a lot's gone wrong with it. And the motivations on people that are using them are very, very powerful. I had them prescribed to me and I wouldn't take them. So, and I talked to a number of people in my community who we've had very good conversations about how bad they are and the damage that has caused in the community.
Yeah. Do you have any ideas about, do you have any ideas about treatment? So as far as, Suboxone clinics and things like that, or needle exchanges or anything like that?
There's a whole variety of measures and all need to be examined to see. Now, remember, we have been applying some of these measures for some time. So we have real life data to go look at and see where our successes have been and where we've been maybe spending and not seeing a rate of return that we would like to see. Okay. So some examination of all the solutions that have been applied ought to happen. And maybe we can, throw a little bit of money, redirect funds to areas where it's more successful. But again, leadership is going to play a role, and we need to, reach down right across. We need to go from the governor's level, maybe congressmen will have a role to play, our mayors, our police departments, they all have a role to play to encourage our young people coming up to avoid these pitfalls. And then we have a role to play with people in the workforce. And, we've got to actively pursue it. It's too dangerous to allow it to drift on its own.
Yeah. So Dave, there's, after the death of George Floyd, there's been a lot of people we're very upset about it, and there's been a lot of protests around the country, and people are demanding change about the way policing is happening in this country. So can you just talk about your thoughts on the protests, on the death of George Floyd, and just the whole topic in general?
Well, BLM Black Lives Matter is a wonderful sentiment. And of course they do. But it begs the question, when do they matter? Do they matter in the abortion clinic? When do they matter? But they're not speaking to that. They're just saying Black Lives Matter, and they're trying to impose, and right behind that comes all this sort of Marxist communist thinking, and that their leadership readily admits they're trained Marxists, and that's what they're using that image of BLM to operate, to work their awful social communist schemes on society. And they will engage police departments, they will engage communities, they will use violence. Now, I want everyone to understand that part of their technique is to always maintain this peaceful front, and behind it, the violence. It's all part of an orchestrated event. for anybody to try to separate the two, is you are either being misled, or you are being, or you don't understand the dynamics of what is going on there, or the tools and practice of Marxists reaching into a country or a community and causing this sort of havoc. So, is there room for police reform? Probably, I'm sure. Just the other day, I was reading an article about the actual use of the placement of the knee on the neck and whatnot, and how common that practice was, and how very few examples were as it related to any serious injury or death. Needless to say, but that aside, let us the examination of police techniques, whatever they may be. Once again, it's a leadership issue. There ought to be something between the mayors or the city council, or they have regular meetings in their police department. They can discuss this issue. The chief of police should be saying, we had this nature of incidents. We have this sort of response. Our training is we respond in this fashion.
So, so are you saying you wouldn't want there to be a state or national level legislation to demand some changes or to change things?
I don't think we have. You would go to a federal level if you thought a state level was failing on a significant level.
Okay.
Right? So first, let's go find out if the state level is working. Mm-hmm. And, so once again, we have people have elected, we've all elected governors, mayors, city council. That's the chain of command. And we have to go in and make sure that the people that we have engaged and put into those positions and pay, and we have placed our trust in them, and they have got to show that they are practicing a level of leadership that justifies their continuing in elected office. And are we really seeing that? Can they prove that to the community? And so citizens, it's a democracy, it's a republic, it's a democracy. One of the elements in that is you got to participate. You got to get involved. You got to show up for the town meetings, not the same 3 people voting to spend everybody's money and raise taxes. And if you go to these town meetings, you're going to see something very much like that. I exaggerate a little bit, but you're going to see something very much like that. Some towns, they have a lot of participation, but in many, it's very little participation. We have to participate in a democracy. If things are going wrong, the first thing we should do is look in the mirror. Are we playing our part? Are we doing our part? Are we doing enough to protect our own interests?
Yeah.
So, yes, we can apply that from top.
Okay. I have one last question because we're almost out of time. So, I just wanted to know how you differentiate yourself, how you're different from your opponent in the primary. I mean, I know on Facebook I saw that you called her a rhino, Republican in name only. So that's probably the start of what you think is different between the two of you. Can you just talk? I mean, you're both veterans, so can you just, in the next minute or so, can you just wrap it up with what you?
All right, real quick, for the Democrats who are going to go in and they look and they're unhappy with the radical left choices they see on the Democratic ballot, they are welcome to write in Dave Rosa Dighton. At the bottom of the ballot, there's an empty space, and they can write my name in there, Dave Rosa Dighton. Now, with regard to differences between me and my opponent, my opponent served it. She's a veteran. She served the country well. So, amen. Thank you to Julie for that. Great. Her area of expertise was hospital administration, and that's a wonderful thing. And thank you for doing that. And it's needed. However, I served, my service is very different. My service is on a much, much broader scale and had a lot to do with spending, the proper oversight of the spending and allocation of billions of dollars and millions of dollars to equip, more than the Air Force. And it had to do with the defense of this country. I played a role where I went into, I sat in a room with design engineers, manufacturing engineers, corporate leaders, and pursued the interests of not only the Air Force, but the interests of the United States government.
All right, Dave, we're out of time. So thank you very much for coming on, and it was great talking to you. All
right, sorry, sir.
No, it's okay. It's okay. All right. So, and thank you everyone for watching, and tune in soon for another episode of Headway.